Have you ever seen a color and thought, I wonder how you would go about matching that color exactly? Well, today, that's exactly what I'm going to show you. I will show you the process that I use to match any color relatively quickly and very accurately. The ability to accurately match any color is extremely important in what we do. Whether you're working on a vehicle repair, general artwork, branding it becomes very important, because if you're recreating a brand for somebody, they want to see their colors. Or it could just come down to overall consistency within your own artwork. Being able to accurately match any color is pretty important. So let's talk about the tools we'll be using in this demonstration. I'll be demonstrating this process using the primary colors: Wicked Red, Wicked Blue, Wicked Yellow, Opaque White, and Opaque Black. Regardless of the paint brand that you use, this is going to apply. Before we start really trying to match this particular color, which was by request from a viewer, let's break down the color. Terminology is important here. You want to understand some basic color theory terminology. For one, we're looking at the hue. The hue means the actual color of this swatch. The chroma, or the saturation, how intense or bright the color is the next thing we want to look at. It's not grayed out. So I don't think there's any gray in this particular color mix. It's a relatively bright value, or it's a nice saturation level. It's bright, but it's not overly bright. So it's somewhat muted, and that I think has to do with the fact that it's been tinted with white. I can tell you right now, probably not going to need Wicked Black, and we're probably not going to need the red. Some other things we're going to need is a stir stick. I like to use a popsicle stick for that. You need a mix cup of some kind in order to mix your paint. I use little cut up photo paper cards to do spray outs. You really want to do a spray out when you're mixing a color, especially if it's something you're going to be spraying through an airbrush. Acrylics tend to dry differently than they look when they're mixed in the cup. And the biggest tool of all is a color wheel. So the way that I go about doing this is I take a color wheel, first of all, and I try to find a color on the color wheel that is relatively close to the color that I'm targeting. Here, a blue-green is darker, so that could be an option. The other thing you can do is when you start turning this center wheel, now you can see the blue-green is lined up with the red, and it gives you an indication of what would happen if you were to add red to a blue-green color. You're going to wind up with a purple. Same thing, if you add yellow, you're going to get a brighter green. If you add blue, it's going to turn into more of a blue-green. If you add white to tint it, obviously you're going to get more of a pale or pastel look, and black will darken it up. So none of those colors look that close under blue-green. The other thing you can do is you can flip this over, and it gives you an indication of what would happen if you tint, tone, and shade a color. Tinting a color means adding white. So blue-green with white added would tint it to more of a pastel color. Toning the color means adding a 50% value of a gray tone, and it doesn't change it dramatically. Shading a color means adding some black to the color. So again, none of those look that close to the color that we are trying to mix. So let's try a different color. Let's try yellow-green. Now if I turn this to where I would add blue to yellow-green, that's not terribly far off from what we're trying to achieve. So that's how I start the beginning process of trying to match a color. A color wheel is incredibly important. It's a great tool to have in your toolbox, especially if you're not that familiar with color theory and how to mix different colors. This will get you pretty close, sometimes even right in the ballpark if you're not sure. So we'll start by mixing up some yellow and some blue to create a yellow-green, and then we're going to add more blue to darken it up. So I'm going to take some yellow, and I don't want to mix a huge quantity of this paint. So I'm pouring just a little bit into this 2-ounce cup. And then I can use my popsicle stick to mix this up. Another really handy tool to have is a sunlight. This is a relatively inexpensive one, but the lighting in the studio, there's a lot of lighting in here, but you also get some different shadows and things. So having a light like this makes it a lot easier to see the accurate color. As you can see, that's a pretty bright green at this point. We need to add some more blue to this mix. Again, I work slowly. I don't want to add too much. So add a little bit of it at a time, because if you go overboard, you'll wind up just chasing it back and forth from one direction to another, and you're going to wind up with way more paint than you probably need. Still very green. Still needs more blue. So we'll add some more Wicked Blue. I want to make sure I get it completely mixed in. And it's still more on the green side, I think. The other thing that you'll notice is this is much lighter in value compared to what we have mixed up. So at this point, we could probably go ahead and add a little bit of white to bring that value down. Again, not a lot. That was probably maybe 10 drops. Getting closer. I still think it's too green, but it's hard to tell for sure. Again, you really need to spray this out to get an accurate representation of the color. I think it can still go a little bit more on the blue side, so I will go ahead and add a little bit more blue. And adding more blue is also going to darken this mixed color up slightly. Let's have a look with the light. It's probably still a little bit too dark. I'm going to add a couple more drops of white. I think that's probably close enough to try spraying it out. I still think it's a little bit too far on the green side, but we'll give it a shot. I don't necessarily want to add reducer in the cup that I'm mixing the paint in. If you want to use this color later and store some of it, then you don't necessarily want to add reducer to your mix. So I like to take a separate little 1-ounce cup, and I'll put just a little bit of this color into the 1-ounce cup. And I can grab some reducer and stir this up so that we have a little bit of this color to spray out on one of my little color cards, which I happen to have one right here. So put that up on the backboard of my easel. Pour this color into the airbrush. Now, ordinarily, I've always advocated to allow your reduced color to sit and acclimate for 10 to 15 minutes before you spray it, just to allow the paint and the reducer to really blend into one product, because it does spray better. When I'm just spraying little cards like this in order to match a color, it's really not that important. So I will put 5 to 6 coats of the color on this little color swatch, drying in between with air only. And we'll see how this color compares. Still very green, needs a lot more blue. This gets easier with time and experience, knowing roughly how much color to add. I'm going to add quite a bit more blue into this because that is very green compared to the printed sample. That's getting more on the blue side, but it's still a little bit dark, so we might add a little bit of white to bring that value down. See how that looks under the light. It's getting closer. I still think it needs to be a little more on the blue side, but let's spray a little bit of this color out just to be sure. I can already tell that's more on the blue side. We'll see how close this one is. Yeah, still too green. The value is still a little bit dark as well. So we need more blue and a little bit of white to add to the mix to try to bring it closer to what we're trying to achieve. So start by adding more blue. Again, that seems like quite a bit, but this is still very green comparatively when you're looking at our samples. So it definitely needs more blue, and I'll go ahead and add a little bit more white to get the value closer to the sample as well. So let's see how that compares. That looks a lot closer to me. So let's spray this color out and see if it is or it isn't. Add a little bit of this color into another 1 ounce cup. A little bit of reducer. Stir this up. Add the color to the cup. Grab another swatch. Definitely more on the blue side now. And then we can set it down and compare it to the other samples that we have. We're still too dark, and maybe a little too green. I'm going to add a little bit more white. Trying not to make a mess. We'll stir this up. That's looking closer. I'm hesitant to put a little more blue into it, but I'm going to try it anyway. Could wind up going a little bit the wrong way. I'm not going to put very much blue in, just a few drops, just to kind of tilt it over that green edge a little bit more, hopefully. Again, I'm making very small adjustments. Now that we're close, I don't want to go too far, swing it in the wrong direction too far where I have to go back and try to correct that. And I'm trying to keep from mixing a ton of paint. At this point, I'm probably maybe 3/4 of an ounce. Let's have a look at that with our light. Man, by eye, that looks really close. So let's try spraying this shade. So we'll add this color into the cup and spray another color card. So let's see how close we are with this one. That's pretty close. It's still a little bit dark, so I think we need to add a little bit more white, and I'm hesitant to add any more blue to it at this point. So if I add a little more white, again, small increments, that wasn't very much. I don't want to swing it wildly too light. We're at the point now where we're close. We're just trying to sneak up on that final result. And we'll try this one more time. Spraying just a little bit of this color. Onto one of my little cards. Pour the color in the brush and spray it onto our card. Man, that's close. It might need to be lightened up a hair bit more. And maybe a touch more blue. That still looks a little bit green to me. Not sure if this is translating on the camera or not, but that's still a touch on the green side. So very slight amount of blue. It's about 4 drops. A little bit more white. And hopefully this will be the color. It almost looks too light in the cup now, and I need one more 1 ounce cup because I only had 5 out. I was hoping I would nail it within those 5 tries. And we'll try spraying this color, which I hope is the final color. We'll see. You can definitely see the blue in this initial coat. Spray one more coat on it. Make sure this is dry. Yeah, that is a match. So that's the basics. That's the method that I use to match any color, whether I'm working on an artwork or a custom paint job, doesn't matter. This is the process that I use. Yes, it takes a little bit of time, it takes a little bit of effort, but in the end, it took me 6 tries to get to where we're at. This color is super close. Is this the easiest method? No, not really. The reason I chose to use the Createx Wicked Blue, the Wicked Yellow, and the Wicked White, or primary colors, is because I understand that most of you don't have every single color offered by, regardless of the paint brand you choose to use. most of you don't have every color available that is offered. This is what I do. I like to keep everything in stock. So if you have another color that's very close to the color that you're trying to match, it's obviously going to be easier to start with that color because it's not going to require as many adjustments. A case in point, the Createx 6010 Autoborn Sealer Green. Here is a spray out of 6010 Sealer Green straight out of the bottle. As you can see, let me get the light, that's pretty close to that value and hue already. Probably needs just a little bit of white added, maybe a touch of blue after the white is added, but you could probably get very close to that color using just the Sealer Green to start out with. So that's another tip. There are apps that you can get on your phone, color mixing apps. I will show you one app that the actual person that requested this video was trying to use. It requires you to use a photograph from your phone of the actual color you're trying to mix. So this is a photograph of this exact swatch. I took it outside so that the lighting was better, and then it's talking about unmixing colors. So that's going to give you a percentage value of the colors that you need to use to make the color. And you can unmix it with digital primary colors, and that's probably closer to the actual swatch, is this dark cyan that it's saying. But you can see it's saying you need 56% of prime cyan, 2% prime green, and 42% black. There's no way you're going to have 40% black in a pigment color mix to make this color. That's going to make it way too dark. If you go to unmix with realistic primary colors, it's giving me a Charleston green when this is the actual color we're trying to make. There are other issues when it comes to using an app to mix colors or get custom mix ratios to match colors. For one, it's always going to depend on the camera on your phone, and not every camera sees color the same way. It depends on your lighting conditions. That's heavily influenced by the photographs that your camera can take. Your camera is not a calibrated device. Different brands of cameras are going to show color differently, just like a computer screen. You can't always see an accurate representation of color when you're looking at it on a screen versus on something that you've actually sprayed. I can show you, I took several pictures of the same swatch using my phone. So if I go to unmix and choose a different image, now it's giving me a different color. Now it says it's Viridian green. If I go to a different image, now it's a teal green. So quick recap, I used Wicked Yellow, Wicked Blue, and Wicked Opaque White in order to get a really close color match to the printed color swatch that we see here. Again, this color that I mixed could probably be tinted with another 3 or 4 drops of white to really dial it in and nail it on the head. It's good enough for the purposes of this video. This is not something that is just going to come easy. You know, it took me 6 shots to get it to where it is now. It takes practice. You have to train your brain and your eyes to see colors, but once you begin practicing, it's a pretty quick learning experience. So it just takes practice, and this is the most accurate way of measuring and evaluating and matching colors, in my opinion, without spending thousands and thousands of dollars. In the refinish industry, we use spectrophotometers in order to get perfect paint matches, but again, those are really, really expensive. From a hobbyist perspective, this is a very good way of doing it. It's a very good and accurate way of doing it, but it is going to take some practice and some time on your end. I have another color matching video that I'll link up here in the corner where I talk about matching a white, a red, and even a pearlescent blue. When you get into pearlescents and metallics, it becomes a little bit more difficult. So work on just trying to match solid colors first. Once you have a good understanding of matching solid colors, the pearlescents and the metallics become a little bit easier. I hope all of that makes sense. I hope you got something out of this. If you did, remember to like, subscribe, and share. If you have questions or comments, please leave them below. If there's a color you're struggling with, let me know in the comments. I'd be more than happy to put a video together showing you how I would tackle trying to match that color. Until next time, I'm Trevor with Wicked Art Studio. I will see you then.